I am here with Intisar Khanani, best-selling author of Thorn, one of the books that got me into indie publishing, indie reading, as well as Sunbolt and the subsequent books in the series. She's very awesome writing Mighty Girls in Diverse Worlds. You write that incredibly well. I love that about your work. Thorn was the first book I ever read in ebook in its entirety, back when it was indie published. Changed my life based on that alone.
Oh, that is so cool. Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yes, so this is the reason for my Kindle addiction. But so how did Thorn come to be? Tell us a little bit about that. Why did you decide to retell the Goose Girl?
It was naivety mostly.
That's new. I've heard that one before.
Well, I was in university. It was my senior year, and I was doing an overload of classes because I had transferred to a different school. And I had this thought, which was, I've always wanted to be a writer. I clearly need to just go ahead and write a book. So senior year, overload of classes, working 20 hours a week. And I was like, well, what am I going to write? What's my novel? And I thought, and here's the naivety, that if I picked a fairy tale I loved, I'd already have the plot, and then how hard could it really be? Which just goes to show that sometimes you need a little bit of innocence to actually, get the job done.
You can't know how hard it will be in advance.
No, you have to have these, stars in your eyes to be able to take on the work. So I wrote a chapter a week of the first draft of Thorn. It was very, very different from the book that you have now. It was told in third person. Once I finished it, I printed it out at the school computer lab, as one did back in those days, and sat down on my bed to read it, and I almost fell asleep. It was so boring. And that was another piece of one must know how to write. And so started a very long process of revisions. I picked the Goose Girl. I picked a fairy tale because I thought that if I had a plot concept, it would be easier to make it through the book. And it probably did help because I knew what my climax was. I knew the ending I was working towards. But I had to teach myself the actual craft of writing along the way. I'd just taken a couple of creative writing classes, and nothing really prepared me for writing a novel. And I probably spent the next 10 years doing 10 or 11 revisions of the story. And it really changed and developed over that time. The year that I first drafted it was the year of 9/11. And so over the course of revisions, I was really struggling with concepts of justice, of cycles of violence, of what do you do when there's no justice to be had, or that when, so-called justice is really just another form of cruelty. And so a lot of that kind of bled into the book. And the book has nothing to do with 9/11. On the surface, but it's just that those were the issues I was dealing with, and they came to play as I was writing this book and looking at them from a different perspective. Fast forward 10 years to 2012, I had tried finding an agent for Thorn. This was before the We Need Diverse Books movement. It was just hard to find anyone who really kind of got what I was trying to do with the book. So my husband sent me an article about ebooks and how they were taking off, and it was no longer the world of vanity publishing. And I was like, well, I'm about to have my second kid. I want to leave work and do something for myself, but still be home with my kids. So I think writing is going to be it. And so I took the leap and published Thorn when I had a toddler and was 8 months pregnant with my second. I don't actually recommend that path. I think it's really wise to wait until both your kids are here. But it worked. It was fine. It all worked out, and I got to meet you.
Yeah, you did. I have noticed that we writers tend to do that. It's like, let's wait until I have the biggest life events I can imagine, and then I will do this. It's like, we all do it.
I think it's because you're just like, well, everything is changing anyhow. I might as well take this crazy leap of faith and put something out there.
Might as well. Like, how hard could it be?
There's that life-changing naivety again.
So this is circling back to your creative process. Like, you alluded to 10 or 12 rounds of edits on Thorn, and I have noticed, I have done beta reading for you in the past. And you have a very deep, very meticulous editing process. So I have mad respect for it. But so since you have gotten like your very well earned deal with Harper Teen. Has your creative process changed or adapted at all? What does it look like right now?
It's not, in a certain sense, like it's not that different from what I did pre-Harper Teen. It was very cool to work with a professional editor. Prior to that, I kind of crowdsourced my editing, which is where you had that meticulous beta reading, right?
You had like 3 rounds of beta reading, I think. With different people.
Because one needs the developmental edits and then the line edits. And so what I did with that kind of beta reading process is I was like, who are my big picture readers? And those were my developmental reads. And who are my nitty-gritty readers? And those were my line edits. And then my story is still broken. Okay, I need another round. So it was very cool to work with an editor, but I found that I still wanted my old process. It just helped me to catch more and deepen my story more. I'm very much an intuitive writer, which, we use the term pantser, and I don't really like it because it suggests that you're flying by the seat of your pants and you don't know what you're doing, and that you don't have a technique. It doesn't really involve skill, right? You're just kind of throwing yourself at the story. And that's not how I feel when I sit down to write. I do have a plan. It doesn't look like a plot. It doesn't look like a plot outline. I do bring skills to bear. I'm really working hard at this, but my method is very different from what you see in a lot of these plotting books. And so one of the things that I really have to do is work with my subconscious, which is a very weird thing to say out loud. It's like, and so today I'm going to sit down and figure out what my subconscious is doing. But I know as an intuitive writer that my subconscious is planting a lot of things as I develop story and as I write it that I may not realize on the surface. So one of the funniest questions I have for my first round of beta readers is, what do you think the themes of this book are? Because I think I know what they are. But a lot of times as I'm writing, kind of a deeper aspect of my storytelling comes through. And I need other people to be like, oh, I see that. And then I can pull it out and strengthen it and turn it into an arc of the story. So that's still a part of how I write. But I figured it was an interesting thing to kind of mention here around process.
I do like intuitive writing better than pantser because I get what you're saying. I kind of know, but I just don't have the 37-page bulleted outline.
Right, exactly. One of my favorite metaphors that I've been thinking about this a lot, and I've been trying to come up with metaphors for how this works. And one of the metaphors that I've kind of developed that I really like is the idea of a chef. And so when you meet a master chef and he walks into a kitchen, or she, and they look in the pantry, they check the fridge, and then they are like, okay, dinner will be ready at 6. You don't say, but where is your recipe? And how are you going to put all these ingredients together, and how can you possibly make a meal on time if you don't know exactly each step and write it down in advance? And it's like, well, no, you trust, right? They have an intuitive knowledge of what they're doing. They've grown up in a kitchen of cooking, and they know how to grab these ingredients and make something amazing. And yes, it will be ready on time. And we see this for all kinds of other artists. But when we see it for writers, we're like, oh my God, how are they going to get that book done on deadline, right? They don't even know what they're doing. They're flying by the seat of their pants. And it's like, no, grew up in a storied kitchen, right? They grew up inhaling stories. And we know what makes a story tick. We know what our stories need. Just because we didn't sit down with our cookie cutter recipe or outline that laid out all of our ingredients beforehand doesn't mean we don't know how to put the story together and have it ready for mealtime, right? It's just a different art form.
Oh, you're an amazing interview guest. These are amazing answers. I am loving this. You're putting to words things I have thought about, just not as well thought out and worded. The chef metaphor is a really good way of looking at it. You're making me feel better about myself too.
It helps other people understand, right? Because and it validates us too. It's not like we don't know what we're doing, but we've been so used to the only way to do the thing is using these craft books that give you exactly the process, and here's your 3-act structure. And I laugh because I figured I learned what a 3-act structure was as I was doing revisions for Theft, which is the second book after Thorn, the Theft of Sunlight. And it was because I have this tendency when I get an edit letter to curl up in the fetal position on the floor and be like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do it. There's so much work. And then I will panic read a craft book. And I'll be like, oh, I know what I'm doing. And I will set the book aside and I'll go on and do my process. And so I read Save the Cat and I learned what a 3-act structure was. And I was like, oh, I know this. I've been doing this my whole life. Forget that. And I put it aside and I went back to my work. But it was really funny to me to be like, I'd internalized what these different structures were, both Western structures and structures that I've read outside of kind of the Western canon. And I know how to do them. I don't need to take my book and divide it up and be like, what is the first act? What is the second? No, I got it. Like, it's in there and I can develop it without having to resort to outlining. See, you have to resort to outlining. It's a terrible fate.
No hate to the people who like to outline, but
we love you all. See, and this is the thing, is that it's like everyone's process is valid, right? And even as, I think, an intuitive writer, when you're learning what you're doing, I think it's so important to try out different things and see what works for you. But that doesn't mean that just because you can put together a book without the outline that your friends need, doesn't mean that you're any less of an artist or any less serious or capable. And I think it's really important for young writers to hear and know.
Oh, I 100% agree. It's like you need to find what works for you, and you have all these resources you can try out, and that's awesome. But I have met so many people, like you're saying, they will get so hung up on this one thing, and I'm like, maybe you just don't write that thing. Like, that's just not the way you work, and that is okay.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah.
Oh gosh. So I did write down the tagline, so it's kind of bad that I couldn't say it. But your website talks about writing mighty girls. The way you depict your heroines is something that, like, even back in 20 whatever, when I first read Thorn, was something that really stood out to me. How do you approach writing mighty girls, and what do you hope readers see in them? What do you hope readers might learn from them? You do write teen fiction, so...
I do.
Yes.
Yeah, I write for young adults because I love young adults. I love that teens are asking really, really big questions, and they're open to complex answers. They're ready for complex answers. Younger kids can also ask big questions, but they're not always able to deal with the more complex realities. Adults often don't want to ask big questions. In terms of mighty girls, I guess it goes back to when I wrote my first novel was, early 2000s. There was this rush of strong heroines, and they were all strong or mighty in these very patriarchal male ways, right? They were going to be stronger than the boys. They were going to be faster and, more powerful than the boys. And it was very much like this male conception of strength. And there's nothing wrong with being able to kick butt better than the boys, or to be a stronger sorcerer or a greater warrior or whatever it is. Like, we need those stories. I am not dissing them. But we also need stories where we reclaim what it means to be strong without reference to patriarchy, right? So these more, historically feminine conceptions of strength, of might, things like being kind, being compassionate, being merciful. These are things that are seen as feminine and are therefore weak, right? But actually, they're some of the most powerful forces we have in our world, right? Like, love is life-changing. Radical kindness or radical compassion can break open systems of oppression. And why do we not talk about them? Because they're so dang effective, right? Because they drive people better than just being stronger, right? Because it's about more than just physical or sorceress or magical might, right? And back when I was writing Thorn, I was like, well, if what it takes to save the world is to be a ninja or a sorceress or have like a training montage, we're done for. I am never going to be able to do this. I do not have these capabilities. That's it. Life is over. World is over. But I don't actually think that's what saves our world. And so I wanted to write stories in which relatively normal people save the world. And they do it because of these, feminine conceptions of strength, right? They do it because they're deeply compassionate, they take a kind of a radical approach to kindness, like Ray does, where she's just like, I will not hurt these children. I will do what I have to protect them. And it's like, oh yeah, this is not soft, right? This is incredibly strong, but it is based in these concepts of these values of compassion and mercy and kindness and love and empathy. And writing that series was really fun because my characters were without magic in a magical world, right? Like, there's curses, there's magic going on, and they're just normal people. And they're like, oh my God, what do I do against Circle of Mages when, like, here I am, just a normal person. The Hitomi with the Sunbolt series is kind of a fun flip to that, where she absolutely has a magical secret and she's, like, super powerful in her way, but that's not actually her true power, right? Like, her true power is her empathy, is how she engages with other people and builds allies and cares about the people in the world around her. And that's part of why, as well, I don't want to give spoilers. But her magical powers shift over the story in ways that people won't expect. And it's partly because it's not the core of who she is. And that's not necessarily how she needs to win against the darker forces in her world.
I've been trying to figure out a way to word it. I do have a whole video planned where I just rant about what we typically see in fantasy books is not actually matriarchy, it's just women in charge of patriarchies.
Right? Oh gosh. How beautifully summed up, Elizabeth.
I took an anthropology class in college and studied all this. But anyway, the script for this video is like 4 pages long.
I love it.
There's a huge vulnerability required to remain kind and to remain compassionate. Yes. It is so terrifying to keep your hand outstretched toward the other person when they just keep striking you.
Yes.
And I do love the way that, like, Hitomi and Rei, I haven't heard her name pronounced out loud before.
So, you did great.
Great. But there's this compassion and this mercy and this empathy that they hold on to regardless of what happens. And it's so beautiful. And it's one of my favorite things about your books. And oh my gosh, I love it so much. And you're describing it so wonderfully.
Well, and I think that's one of the interesting things is that when people see characters like this, they're often coded as naive. Like, the reason they're kind and hopeful and compassionate is because they're dumb, right? Like, they haven't met the real world. All of my characters know exactly what the world is like, and they choose to be the way they are. And I think it's really important for young people today to kind of see that, I think, and have those models, because it's so easy to be hard and cold and callous and not give a dang, especially in a world where, I don't want to get political, but we're so divided, right? And there's so much divisiveness and ugliness, and it's very easy to lose your heart. And I think that realizing that you actually have to work and to maintain those kinder parts of yourself and to fight for that, it's not a passive thing. I think that's really important for kids and adults to see, but I'm writing for kids.
Was it Madeline L'Engle said, like, if it's too difficult for adults, you must write it for children?
100%, yes.
You also talk about diverse worlds on your world building is phenomenal.
Oh,
and
thank you.
what's it? Not Eurocentric? Is that the word I'm looking for?
Probably,
I think that's it. So what is your approach to writing these worlds, and, like, how do you carry out research? Because you blend a lot of things together, like, very, very seamlessly, very well. But how do you carry out your research? How do you create these worlds?
Let's see. How do I carry out my research? I am not a research junkie. I hate researching. I carry out my research with great sorrow and pain. I'm like, oh no, I have to figure this out. For world building specifically, I do try and sit down with people and talk to them, because I find that much more both enlightening and interesting. Also, I do read, specifically with the Sunbolt Chronicles, I'm drawing from different kind of historic places and cultures across the world, so it's not really modern day. And so while sitting down, so for example, Hitomi starts out in an island archipelago that is based off of historic Zanzibar. And she, in the second book, is in the equivalent of an Ottoman era Istanbul. And then in this third book that's coming out in July, she is out in the desert among kind of Bedouin Arabs, but the Bedouin Arabs of yesteryear, right? Like there's very few left who live like this. And so that research definitely, is book-based. I'm trying to find primary sources, which can be challenging because in this Eurocentric space that we're in, it's very rare to find primary sources that have been translated into English so I can access them. But travel logs are really helpful. So like people who traveled there, and you have to really watch for all of their various biases, both the overt racism and the implicit biases. But it's still interesting, still helpful. And then definitely having sensitivity readers to catch things that I don't have. And with all of these, again, finding people who have lived in these places. I've tried to mostly pick places that I have at some point in my life visited, so I have a general sense of them, but it's been, oh gosh, like 20 years since I was in Zanzibar, maybe more. So yeah, those are kind of faded impressions, right? Looking at way back in the day when Pinterest was not covered in AI, just scrolling through pages and pages of historic, whether it's clothing or paraphernalia or portraits of people, modern and past, just trying to get a sense of the visuals. I am not a visual person at all. If I could, all of these books would take place in like a white room in terms of what you can actually see around you, because I don't see things when I write. And so I have to build all of that in very, very consciously, and I often need kind of visual inspiration for that because I don't know what it looks like. So yeah, it's a lot of not fun. I know people who love this stage, and I'm not one of them.
I think you're the second person I've talked to who's like a really good world builder, who I think is a really good world builder and absolutely hates the world building.
I mean, to be fair, I like being in the world. I really enjoy that. It's just the active aspect of figuring out what it looks like that's rough. And a lot of times, because I'm more on the intuitive side of things, I will kind of develop a little bit of the understanding of the culture and the, what holidays they might have or whatever I feel I need to know for that particular space. And then I'll write the story and then I'll be like, okay. What's missing, what's working, what's not working, like what's real, what's not real. I'll make notes as I go through of, one of the fun things in Memories of Ash with Hitomi is there's a big festival taking place in the city when she's there. It's called the Festival of the Guilds. And it was a real festival. And so it was really fun to like actually do that research about this old festival that used to happen where, there was like processions through the city each day from different parts of the city, and the guilds from that section would join in, and they would literally, as they were proceeding, and they were going to the palace to pay taxes. Like, you would think this wouldn't be a good thing, right? But as they processed through the city, that was their opportunity to share just how awesome their work was. And so they would throw little gifties, keepsakes out into the crowd as they went, and they would build these huge floats that were pulled by like hot horses or oxen. And it was this huge thing. Even the burning of the fortresses that I mentioned was a real thing at that time. It was related to, obviously, not throwing back whatever I said was a real, but it was about forcing back invaders who were attempting to take over. So there is like a lot of depth that you gain from the research, and it's fun to do that. When I first wrote Memories of Ash, I was like, probably need some kind of festival or thing going on, and then I was like, well, let me look and see. And so that's where that kind of came from.
I need to go reread that now. Let's see what I need to like cross-reference it now. I love that. It's been a while since I've read Memories of Ash, so
it's been a while since it first came out.
Yeah, it has been. I think I will be posting this episode in July, so Debts of Fire should be out by the time I
July
post
8th,
this. So yes, you have sent me an advanced reader copy, and I have pre-ordered at least one physical version of the book. I need to have it in hardcover because I have the other two books in hardcover.
Love that.
I need to complete the set. So
and I should warn you that it's technically a 4-book series.
Oh dear. Okay.
Like, I'm realizing a lot of people are like, yeah, the trilogy's complete. And I'm like, no.
That did occur to me as I was placing the pre-order. I was like, I should ask her how many books are in the series.
I've been trying to put on all of the blurbs at the bottom. I'm like, this is book 3 of 4. Oh no. I realize with the term like Chronicles, like it's not clear how many books you're going to get. And I can understand how folks would be like, okay, 3rd book, we must be done. But it's 4-book series. So if you stop at the 3rd book, you'll be like, well, we never got that major showdown.
It's a quadrilogy. What quadrilogy? Quartet. There you go. I've heard it. I think quartet is better than quadrilogy.
I like quadrilogy. It's got a certain indie ring to it.
I think I've alluded to this already, but Hitomi is my favorite one of your heroines. I love Rei and Alira too, but Hitomi's my favorite, my little baby.
I mean, she's kind of my disaster child. She's so fun, right? Like,
oh my gosh, the shenanigans and the success. Like, but, so Like Alira and Ray, I really love how she remains so kind through all of these horrible things that happen to her. Yes, horrible things happen to Alira and Ray as well.
I don't know. I'm just sitting here being like, I must be a horrible author. Look at me doing all these horrible things.
You seem to want to explore these themes of remaining kind through hardship, so hardship has to be there.
One day I'll write cozy fantasy, and then they don't have to go through the hardship. They can just be kind.
Maybe. Well, I'll believe it when it happens. So.
Thanks a lot, Elizabeth.
I'm sure you could do it. It's just
I'm not sure I can. I have this tendency to be like, well, something's got to go wrong now. Meanwhile, all I want to read is happy fluff. So yeah, I don't know.
There will be a satisfying ending. You don't write grimdark. It's like, so long as it's not grimdark.
It's not grimdark, yeah.
I can do it. So long as I know that there will be hope at the end.
Yes,
I can
100%.
survive. What were some of your inspirations for Hitomi's story? You've talked a little bit about the inspirations for her world, but how did her story come to you?
Kind of an interesting progression. So when I first started writing, I had like 2 or 3 pages of a scene, and I just called it Night Story because it took place at night. I had no idea what was going on, but it was really intriguing. There was a girl, she was hiding from people, things were going drastically wrong, but I didn't know what the wider picture was. I didn't know what my chef's brain was trying to cook up. That little snippet, 3 or 4 pages, stayed with me for, a couple of years. And then I was traveling to Pakistan. My family and my husband's family originally from there. And my husband's father was kind of in the end stages of his struggle with cancer. And so I flew there to be with him, with his family. There was a 10-hour time difference at that point between Pakistan and the East Coast in the U.S. And so I was like, I'm just not going to fight jet lag, because we wanted one person to stay up at night with the night nurse with my husband's father. The rest of the family was gathered in the room and sleeping, and I was awake, and the night nurse was there. And I picked up that piece of story again, and over those 2 weeks of my father-in-law's passing, the first novel, Sunbolt, just came kind of pouring out of me. It's very hard for me to be like, oh, this is where the inspiration came from. Like, I don't know. I had that snippet, and it's funny because none of that is left in the final book, but that was a jumping off point to kind of discover who Hitomi was and then write her story. But it really was, 2 weeks for the whole story to just kind of come out. It felt, I don't know if you've ever had this experience writing, but it's almost like you can't wait to sit down because the story is just flowing, and it's understand where people talk about the muse, because this was just this incredible time of the story coming together for me and coming out. It was very needed for me. It was an escape from the grief and the stress of the situation that we were dealing with. And I look back, and there are kind of these interesting moments in Sunbolt where I'm like, oh, I get it now. And I didn't at the time, but at one point towards the end, Hitomi suffers an injury and she loses her hair. And it's this fascinating, unintentional metaphor for a cancer patient dealing with radiation chemotherapy, where you burn yourself from the inside out and you lose your hair. And that is what what I was seeing with my father-in-law, and somehow it ended up in the book as well. And I didn't even realize that I didn't make the connections until a year or two later, when I was ready to kind of revise it for publication. And I was like, oh, huh. Go figure. There was my subconscious dealing with that sorrow.
Wow. As just all came pouring out of you in 2 weeks. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I've never, like, most books take me a long time. So that was definitely a different experience.
I was going to ask you about where the idea for the magic system came from, but it sounds like it was just poured out.
Just baked in yeah.
There. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, my next question is, what has been your most surprising source of inspiration? Maybe we could circle back to that, but is there anything else you...
I think, the other thing I can think of with that was when I was working, I knew I needed to write The Theft of Sunlight. I had Ray as a character. I knew who she was, and I knew she was going to do something, and I didn't know what.
I think you wrote a story, The Bone Knife.
The Bone Knife, right.
I remember
which
reading
is
that.
Ray, and she's kind of happy at home with her family, and she has a little adventure. And the reason I wrote The Bone Knife was because I wanted Ray to have a functional family. And I was like, what the heck does that look like in fantasy? Like, I never read that before.
Is this allowed?
Oh, would your family actually bless you on your adventure? I don't know. So I read The Bone Knife to kind of feel out what a functional, caring family would look like and how you can have an adventure despite being hobbled with one, right? Because conventional wisdom would have it your family either needs to be missing or dead in order for you to grow up, right? At least in YA fantasy life. Mm-hmm. And so, like, what if they're neither? What if they're, like, just nice people and they love you? Like, how do you grow up, right? How do you have adventures? Oh, my God. So I read The Bone Knife to start to figure that out. I had The Bone Knife already, but I knew The Theft of Sunlight was going to take on a bigger issue, and I didn't really know what it was. At that point, a very light line in Thorn about snatchers and people disappearing, but it wasn't really a focal thread. And so I was actually traveling internationally, and the airline I was on had a little envelope, and they were like, put your spare change in here for like the currency that you don't need anymore, and we're donating it to an organization that fights human trafficking. And I remember sitting there and looking at that envelope and being like, human trafficking, that's what the Snatchers are about, and that is what Ore is going to do. So I'm really glad I was randomly traveling internationally at that point. I suspect I would have gotten there eventually anyhow, but it really helped to have that envelope show up in front of me.
That is very random. This may be a hard question, but which book or series are you most proud of right now?
Oh, yeah, that is a hard question. I don't know.
Do you have a thing that you are most proud of in each of them?
I mean, I feel like they're each like really different from each other. And it was really neat to write each of them because I learned different things both about myself and about my craft through them. You know, Thorn deals with Lyra's a survivor of abuse. It has been really special to hear from people who have dealt with abuse and found her story resonating with them. And so that's been a really special thing. And then Theft and A Darkness at the Door with Ray. She has a disability, and it's just part of the texture of who she is. She has a club foot, she walks with a limp, and she has her adventure, and it has nothing to do with her disability. It's just her disability is just a part of who she is as she navigates her adventure. And again, with these sorts of things, like I do have sensitivity readers, and we talked a little bit about how I do my research. I definitely have sensitivity readers for representation like that. But it was both beautiful and humbling to hear from readers who saw themselves on the page for the first time, saw themselves having adventures, being part of a world that they had historically been barred from. And so I won't say I'm proud, but I am really grateful to have been able to write those stories. And Hitomi, I mean, she is my disaster child. I love her. She's biracial, and that has been really neat to write. She's a third culture kid like myself, so she's a product of two different cultures growing up in a third culture, and that is my own experience. That has been just really special to be able to write because I don't see that reflected. Not a lot of people even know the term third culture kid, but it's a whole different experience to feel that the places you call home don't claim you back, right? You always have to fight for every place that is your home to be your home because you don't look right or you don't sound right or you're clearly, you have a mixed heritage or you're not even from there, but like you grew up there, so it's still home, right? And so having the chance to write Hitomi and how she makes pretty much every place she goes becomes home for her in a certain sense is such a wonderful experience. I'm really grateful to have been able to write too.
When I was reading Sunbolt, I did recognize a lot of the things my mom has talked about, like as being Japanese and American. That's not quite third culture because she did grow up in America. But it
was an immigrant experience to certain extents too. Yeah,
so it's just like certain members of my dad's family not loving we're part Asian, but I'm blonde. Like how hard my life's not that hard. It was all my mom's problem.
It's interesting. Yeah.
I didn't connect the third culture kid experience, but now that you say that, yes, I do see a lot of that in these books, and you're right, I haven't read that very often, like even outside of fiction. So everybody watching this interview, you should read these books.
Thank you. I concur.
They're so good. So what has been you've met alluded to some reader interactions, but do you have a most memorable or favorite interaction you've had with a reader in the past?
I've had some really touching experiences. I have very, very few in-person events. I think mostly it's being primarily an indie author. In-person events are just, they don't make a lot of sense. They tend to end up costing more than any amount of books you can sell. But I had an event and someone drove 3 hours out to meet me, and we really only interacted for like 5 minutes. It was so touching that this person had enjoyed my stories and just wanted to come and just say hello. And they didn't want any books signed, they didn't want any swag, they were just like there to say hello and let me know that they appreciated my books. And it was so special. Like, it stuck with me for years now. And then of course, as I mentioned, like some of the reviews and the messages I've gotten from folks who've read my stories and seen themselves reflected in ways that they haven't before. That has been really special for me. Those are the kinds of things that help me to keep going when writing gets tough, which is like, let's be real, writing is often tough. Especially nowadays. So just those kind of things that end up meaning a lot. I'm really grateful for those.
I'm really glad you had delusions of grandeur in college. You're a really good writer.
Thank you. Me too. I was like, how hard can it be? Oh, sweet summer child. Oh my gosh.
What is something you would like to write about someday that you haven't yet? Or like, what do you think you would bring to it? And what is it?
I have a project that I have been wanting to get to for like 2 solid years now. And it is a dystopian, post-apocalyptic, gender-swapped retelling of Sleeping Beauty, in which a young woman accidentally wakes up a Djinn Lord from cryogenic sleep, which he was put in for really good reasons. I am really excited to write this book. So this is probably, I live in Ohio, and of course there are no books set here because, there's no books set here. Very few fantasy books are set in the Ohio, Kentucky, kind of Indiana area because like we're not that exciting. So I'm going to set this story here, but post-apocalyptic, and all of the supernatural creatures have come out of the woodwork and basically smacked humanity down for, climate change and all the wonderful things we've done. And so this story kind of takes place about 100 years after that happens. So you have this meshing of fae and djinn magic and tech, and there's this fairy tale structure, but you're starting at the end of the fairy tale with waking up your so-called Sleeping Beauty and then being like, whoa, what happened and what was the spindle and where are we going? Oh no! So I very much want to write that story. That's my next plan after I finish the Sunbolt Chronicles.
Every word you said made me want to read that more, including and the.
Thank you.
That sounds amazing. Like I was like, I never thought you would say post-apocalyptic. I was like, wow. Okay, we're in for a treat.
I've mostly been very solidly fantasy, but this story, I think partly this is going to work because I want to mesh magic and tech, so I've still got my fantasy elements.
This has been amazing. I've had so much fun. I'm so glad you were able to have the time to come talk to me. Where can people find you online, and do you have any projects you'd like to tell us about?
Sure. So I am at booksbyintisar.com, and all my social media handles are Books by Intisar. I'm really only active on Instagram, and even that is not like super active. But you can find my monthly newsletter on my website, and I do have Patreon where we have a shared Discord with a number of other authors, and it's super fun.
I didn't know you had a Patreon.
Yeah, that's also Books by Intisar. I apparently had a realization about a year into publishing that I needed to be consistent. It was like one of the best decisions I've ever made. And yeah, in terms of projects, I have Debts of Fire coming out in July, as mentioned. I have another anthology project that is coming out next summer that I'm excited about. I am working with Nafisa Azad, who is another gay fantasy author, and she and I are co-editing an anthology of 15 stories from Muslim women writers, pulling from our varied heritages and the kind of folk tale, fairy tale feel. But we decided to play with it a little bit, and so it's called 1,000 Nights. It takes the 1,001 Nights or the Arabian Nights as its inspiration. In that setup, you have, the Sherazad, and she's telling stories to save her life. And we were like, well, we don't really want to do that. That's kind of great. It's been done before. It's also a little messed up. But what if we had a different frame narrative? And so we have a story of two teen girls who are fleeing a colonial invasion. They are trying to cross a desert to seek refuge in a city on the other side. And as they travel and meet other people, and as their group grows, they tell stories to help each other keep going. And those are the 15 stories from our contributors. So Nafisa and I are editing the frame right now. It's been a really cool because it's like a mini novel containing short stories. And that is, again, coming out next summer. It's called 1,000 Nights. So
is that 26?
Yeah, 26.
Okay. I don't know that I've ever heard of an anthology done like that. Am I just behind on the information of anthology? This sounds very original to me.
I mean, again, like the Arabian Nights did it however many hundreds of years ago, but we're totally stealing it. It's so original. Oh dear.
Oh gosh, maybe like Arabian Nights would predate it, but maybe Chaucer is the closest thing. Like the Canterbury Tales is like the closest thing I can think of to that.
Yeah, that's like the European or UK version of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of people traveling, complaining. So I'm sure yours will be way better.
It's going to be like Canterbury Tales, but a lot better and a lot less body.
But actually
you don't
good.
have to know Middle English to read it. That was like the worst unit in college, was having to do Canterbury Tales. Like, really?
Oh gosh, my professor took mercy on us and just gave us the translation.
No, we had to read it in the original. I was like, what is this? And why? This is your heritage, not mine. I don't need this. Thanks.
We can't even read it.
I mean, apologies to any English professors listening, but...
My English professor didn't love it either, so I don't think she'd mind.
Oh my goodness.
That comes to the end of my questions. I'm very excited for what you have coming up. I'm very excited I'm on my own writing deadline right now, so I'm very excited to get to Debts of Fire. It's like taunting me from my Kindle. But thank you so much for joining me.